Now, the vehicle to get the biggest amount of updates, I would argue, certainly, was the Bruckle Grand Marshal. I think it's Bruckle, is it? I don't know. It's the Grand Marshal. And the reason is they added a ton of configurations. They added drag, drift, or in this case, track. I decided to go with track because I wanted something different. I could have used the drag. Heck, the drag, I can guarantee you, is faster, but I wanted to show off the track, which I thought would be interesting, and it's still pretty quick. It's not a slow vehicle. However, a wheel on the grass would, yeah, cause an issue, shall we say. Don't put a wheel on that dirt. That will kill you. Quite safe to say, we kind of lost the body. Like, the whole body. And then I couldn't get the camera to work. But I had to figure out where it went because, they just added this feature, apparently. It kind of fell in the ocean, in the river. Not the ocean, but the river. Yeah, that would be a painful one to be in. I don't think you would survive that. Funnily enough, getting the entire body of the car chucked, probably a good half a mile, quarter mile, down into a river, would be quite painful. But I gave it another go. Truth be told, this vehicle isn't that hard to drive. The only difficult thing about it is it has a mild amount of drag from the rear wing, and that means the acceleration isn't the greatest, and that means you have to push it harder and later into the braking zone, which causes accidents, shall we say. We get to some pretty decent speed, but I just can't quite get it stopped. And then we do our favorite wall ride and roll over tactic. Not ideal. Very dead car, very dead person probably as well. Yeah, that was painful. I really thought I had that one under control, and then no. It was in control and dead. But eventually I did get a clean run. And it got very close. It got very close. I lost the back end and then just stopped in time. I mean, I was completely out of control at that point. But we just about made it work. And that is our completed run. We might need some new underwear after that one. This is the newest vehicle to be added to the game. It's called the Blue Buck. And I could have put it in the drag spec, which would have gone crazy fast, and it would have, you know, been very similar to the Moonhawk. However, I wanted to go with the new version, the stock car version, because I think it looks epic. And it is a stock car, so it's going to be pretty quick at the end of the day. One thing I didn't account for is the gear ratios are very, very, very long. So acceleration is a bit sluggish. I mean, it's pretty heavy and it's not the most powerful vehicle in the world, but the acceleration is a bit terrible because of the gear ratios. I actually almost get it stopped on the first try, and I mean, it's not a very bad accident, certainly probably the least we've seen, but it did cause damage to the car. It actually, like, I don't think it broke the radiator, but I wanted a redo. I wanted a redo on it, and it was a good vehicle. I was hoping for a little bit better for, you know, basically a NASCAR, 1960s NASCAR, but it just wasn't up to the task, really. It was kind of disappointing. I was hoping for a fair bit more from the Blue Buck. I was also hoping not to do that, nose it right into a tree. I mean, there's aiming, and then there's you can't do that if you tried. That is right into a tree. You could not do that if you tried. The wheel spin required to get it at the exact angle to twist into a perfect tree spire is quite impressive. But it just wasn't fast enough. I think it was a combination of the gear ratios and the weight. The power is there, it's a pretty big V8, but the weight and the gear ratios just kill it. But I do eventually get it nice and soft, and a little bit of a burnout for the Blue Buck. Slightly disappointing, but still some spectacular runs here and there. we have another hill climb car, this time being the Sunburst hill climb car with an even bigger wing, an even bigger diffuser, an even bigger splitter, and even more power. Yeah. Just when you thought the Pigeon hill climb car couldn't get crazier, this one has to up the ante just that little bit more. This is terrifying. It's not bad on the controllability front, but just the sheer speed is terrifying. And it's not too fast, 152, but it's just the nature of it. I actually almost got on the first try. However, I might have clipped that rock. Yeah. That rock was, quite lethal, apparently, as it turns out. The vehicle did work, but, it was, not the best in terms of steering. So I gave it another go. And I really wanted to do this. I wanted to get over 150. I know it was possible. I saw it in the first try. I almost got on the first try. But it's just trying to get the brakes right. You see, if you're off by even fraction of a millimeter on the braking point, you're going in the wall very hard. Amazingly, the car still worked. I mean, that was, what, 70 miles an hour into a rock face? And it works. The engine's at a funky angle. Then I properly kill it. Yeah, it's not working anymore. But, it was working until I clipped a rock. Yeah, well done me. That's called, scaredy cat braking, when you brake about 50 feet too early, probably. Yeah. Not my greatest bit of driving. But I do at least get a clean run here. A little bit later on the brakes, not quite as late though. I almost hit the rock, but yeah. Nice and controlled, coming to a stop. Not bad, not as good as I was hoping. When it comes to supercars, there is really only one top dog here in Beam, and that is the Bolide. It's always been the top dog, and this is the Noette? I don't know how to pronounce it. N-O-T-T-E or something. It's the fastest, stealthiest version of the car. I didn't want to go for the race car because of the added downforce on the wing, but I figured this one had enough power, and it certainly had enough wheel spin. And, yeah, I might have spun it. But I was like, hey, you know what? I recovered, so I kept going just to see what I could do. And, this vehicle took a fairly long time. It wasn't the worst vehicle by far, because it is a supercar after all. But it wasn't the easiest, and it wasn't the fastest, surprisingly. I did properly tree it, but, it wasn't the worst. It would be wrong to call it the worst. It just took a few accidents here or there, but eventually I did get a clean enough run, we'll say. I did, you will see here in a little bit, I did slightly hit the wall. And it caused minor damage, but it certainly wasn't enough to hinder the vehicle at all. It didn't break the radiator, it didn't do any of that stuff, but so I allowed it. So it wasn't the fastest. I was expecting a little more, but all in all, not too shabby. Now when it comes to the hill climb cars, nothing can really touch the SBR4. It has the biggest of the wings, it has the biggest of the power figures, and the biggest of the splitters. It's pretty much a car dialed up to 11. And it's very, very fast. And terrifying. But it's all about getting it right. And as you can see, I did not get it right. That was a very violent accident. Just a slight wheel on the dirt had a very, very, very big accident. If you survived it, I don't think you would survive the G-forces of it twirling that fast. And then the wheel runs off to freedom in the distance. That was a big one. As I said, you cannot touch the dirt, especially at very high speeds. If you touch the dirt, you die. Simple as that, really. So, you had to be careful. You had to be very careful with, especially the hill climb cars, the racing cars, because they're on slicks. If you touch the dirt, the difference in texture will cause massive issues. not as massive as issues of missing your braking zone and going for quite a roll and then balancing very nicely on your side. Mind you, but very nice balancing act from the SBR4. This one took a while. This one took quite a while. It just was so fast, you had to be so perfect with it. You can see how much it's bouncing around. And then if you lose the back end, you die. And then you make a flag. Yeah, there were just so many violent accidents with this car because you were going so fast, and it was on such a knife edge of control. If you were in control, you were in perfect control. If you were out of control, you were perfectly out of control, and you were going to die no matter what. So, it was a very difficult balancing act that resulted in several fatalities if you were driving this. But eventually, I did get a clean run, and it's very quick. It's a very quick car. I don't know if it's a supercar or a sports car or a hatchback or what. I think it's a supercar, but it certainly has supercar performance. This thing was blisteringly quick. Absolutely bonkersly fast. Provide you can get it stopped in time. Now I know what you're saying. We already ran the SBR4. Why are you running a slower version? Well, I'm not. This is the eSBR4, completely different, the first electric car from Beamng, from their developer version. And I wanted to give it a go because, well, it's an interesting comparison. It's not going to be the fastest car, because it is electric by its nature. It's not going to be the best handling. What I did not expect is, despite being all-wheel drive, the surprising amount of wheel spin, and then the traumatizing understeer. Just traumatizing understeer in this car. I mean, it makes sense. It's very heavy. It's got a lot of power. It's got all-wheel drive, so it has all the hallmarks of understeer, but that was excessive. It is also very quick accelerator. It's 130. That's as fast as a drag car. The problem is it just runs out of speed. Just runs out of straights. And then we have to brake. Amazingly, I didn't completely die with that crash. But, yeah, the problem with this vehicle is it's quite heavy, and it's quite fast, and it's not very good handling, so it doesn't really stop. And it took quite a while to actually get a clean run with it, but once I did, for being electric, it did far better than I would have expected, because electric cars generally struggle in the top end because their power curve flatlines very quickly. But this did surprisingly well. I was very pleased with how the eSBR little neon green thing did. So provided you can get it stopped without understeering like a maniac, it can go quite fast. With all the moderately sensible sports cars and coupes and, you know, stuff like that all finished up, it's time to move on to the sillier vehicles, like the D15D series. Now this is the sport version, so it has a supercharged V8, and it's a bit more performance-oriented, but at the end of the day, it's still a pickup truck, and a very oversteery pickup truck at that. It's kind of based off the SVT Lightning. It is a wheel spin machine, and for being, well, as aerodynamic as a barn, it's pretty quick. 128 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour when I lose control and absolutely kind of die. It could have gone a lot worse, that accident. It could have gone an awful lot worse. But it wasn't too bad at the end of the day. But yeah, that was very painful. You can see the engine in there. Very supercharged, very V80, and many powers are generated to the rear wheels. And again, for being a pickup truck, it's not too bad. It's not too bad to drive, except for the wheel spin, which I can manage. It's not too bad for the handling, which, you know, all things considered. It's just okay, all in all. Getting on the brakes. The brakes were not the greatest, but again, we're asking a pickup truck to do many things it's not supposed to do. The rock claims another victim. And yeah, for a pickup truck, which is not at all designed to go speedrunning, it wasn't bad. I would love to have better brakes on it, I would love to have all-wheel drive, and I would love to have maybe a bit better suspension, but all in all, I'm pretty pleased with it. I was expecting a lot worse when I picked the D series here, and yeah, I was quite pleased with it. He come to a nice and controlled stop. We almost hit the rock again, but we just kind of tapped one. So yeah, nice clean run. There we go. Continuing on with the off-road-ish theme, we have the Roamer. Now this is a SUV, the worst class of vehicle ever designed in the history of mankind. That's not the point. The point is it has a V8 all-wheel drive and the aerodynamics of a skyscraper. So it's not very quick. Even with the sport option that I have here, we're still barely cracking 90. We might just get about over 100 miles an hour, but it was not happy. It was just slow. There was nothing about it. It was just a slow vehicle. I mean, to be fair to it, it did make it on its first try, and it could just about do some pretty good celebratory donuts. Not that it deserves those celebratory donuts, because it was only 105 miles an hour, roughly. Continuing on with the SUV theme, we have, well, the Hopper, basically a Willys Jeep. And, how can I say this politely? It sucks. It has, this is the most powerful, the sportiest option, it's actually the sport package. Has a naturally aspirated straight 6, developing an unknown amount of horsepower, probably not many. And as you can see, we're struggling to get above 80. We're struggling to reach 90 miles an hour, and it's pathetic. In fact, it was so pathetic, I genuinely thought I had messed up. So, I redid the run, because I genuinely thought I messed something up. It was so pathetic. But no. The Hopper is so slow in the straight line, it can't even crack 100 miles an hour. I don't know what the vehicle's top speed is. I would assume not much, but it was not fast. To be fair to it, it was pretty controllable. It was not very difficult to get speed out of it. Of course, that is because there was not much speed to be gotten out of it in the first place. So, yeah, pathetic showing from the Hopper. Truly a terribly slow vehicle. Now, the H15 is a van. No way of putting it, it's a van. However, this is a special variant of the van. You see, Beamng decided to make a drift version of it. So this has a massively supercharged V8. Now, my fear with this is, well, it's a drift vehicle, so it won't be very controllable. And yes, it was not the best vehicle in the world to drive, but it was surprisingly easy compared to my expectations. In fact, we were getting to some serious speed, 120 miles an hour in the van. It was reaching 130 when I got on the brakes, and I got on the brakes actually a fair bit too late, and the van had an incident. Yeah, the radiator leaking is the least of the problem when the engine has died quite considerably. Yeah, that's what ramming into a wall at 80 miles an hour will do for you. But, I was astounded by the van. It is kind of humorous. First off, it got away with running on the dirt a little bit. That was terrifying. Second of all, it's fast for a van. It's scary fast for a van. And now, granted, the drift suspension didn't help on this run, as it got treed because I went on the brakes, the back end went out, because it's like, hey, I'm a drift van, watch me drift, and then I died. So, the drift van did have its problems, to be fair, but it was surprisingly fast. I was very impressed with my van. The brakes were not ideal, simply because it's not designed to go speedrunning, it's designed to go very fast and drift. So the brakes were not ideal. Brakes are not ideal at all. However, if you can just about keep it under control, you can drift your way out of any problem with the van. Yeah, scarily impressive. I was very surprised. No, your eyes do not deceive you. This is the Pigeon, the three-wheel pickup truck. Now, this is the fastest version. It's a 600cc engine. And it actually has a lot going for it. It's very light, so acceleration is good. It also has a surprising amount of power. It's kind of like a little mini motorcycle. And the handling, one would think going 70 miles an hour in a three-wheeler and making a slight course adjustment would be death sentence. However, it wasn't. We were getting up to 100 miles an hour, which means we are not last place, by the way. The three-wheeler is faster than the hopper, and it can almost get nice and controlled. Now, the vehicle worked from that. It didn't suffer any damage from it, but I know that simply because this is one of the strongest vehicles on the planet. The Pigeon. Don't know why, but it's a tank. And it was very, very fast for a three-wheeler, and it does some very deserving celebratory donuts. Well played, Pigeon. Well played. This is not a Pigeon. This is a semi-truck, specifically with a ram plow. And I chose the ram plow for two reasons. One, the version it's using is called the Destroyer, which has NOS and a massively turbocharged, massively horse-powered up engine. That is a technical term, horse-powered up, that is a technical term. And two, the ram plow, in theory, should give me better aerodynamics, reduces drag, cuts to the wind, all in all, more top speed. And for a semi-truck, it's not bad. We're getting up to, 100 miles an hour here coming up to, pretty sharpish. That's terrifying in a truck, and more impressively, the brakes actually get me stopped, which is probably the more impressive thing. It's very close. I almost lost a wheel there on the Rock of Doom, but semi-truck, not bad. Not bad at all. And finally, we have the bus. But not any ordinary bus. This is a brand new version with the ram plow and the JATO rockets. Yes, there are rockets attached to the back of this bus. Now, the rules said the vehicle had to be drivable by the end of it. There was no rule saying what was powering the vehicle. So I was allowed to use the rockets on the bus. Provided the vehicle functioned by the end of the journey, I allowed the bus. And I was very concerned about the engine exploding. Like that. But I decided to keep it going, just to see what I could do. And the bus was very fast with the rockets. It was also very undrivable. However, critically, it was very fast. And if I managed my rockets correctly, I could probably keep the engine alive, I reckoned. So, yeah. This was gonna be a challenge. And this did take quite a while to get right, because I had to keep the engine alive, and I had to keep control of the bus at 150 miles an hour on a twisty two-lane road with a wall at the end of it. Yeah. And then that didn't work either. I clipped a rock, and clipping a rock with a jet-powered bus is not a good idea, I will add. And then I became a mountain climber with the wreck of my bus. Yeah, the bus got messed up a few times. There were several horrific accidents, shall we say. Chief among which is getting it stopped for the corner. You have to start braking once the straight begins. Because if you brake before the straight, you won't get enough speed out of it. And if you brake after the straight, you don't stop. Because a bus going 150 miles an hour doesn't stop very well, funnily enough. And the brakes start fading and it causes issues and it's just a mess. However, it is doable. I managed a clean run with the bus at over 150 miles an hour. It was terrifying, and I don't know how I got it stopped really, but I got it stopped, I got it under control, and I hope to never do it again because it was terrifying. But it is doable, and that makes the bus one of the fastest vehicles in the game. Oh, I love this game sometimes. And now on to our results. First place would go to the Moonhawk, 174 miles an hour for the drag car. Very impressive showing. Second place would go to the Beamng.Drive dragster as well, doing 169 miles per hour. Just 4 miles an hour down the road from that, we have the SBR4 hill climb. That was able to achieve 165, not bad for the amount of aerodynamics on that vehicle. Fourth place would be the 200BX. One of the scariest cars in the top 5, that is for sure. Doing 159 miles an hour, which was terrifying. Fifth place would be a three-way tie between the Pigeon, the hill climb version, the ESBR4, the electric supercar, and the JATO powered bus. Yeah, that's a very strange tie, a hill climb car, an electric car, and a jet powered bus. Each of them doing 152 miles an hour. The more you know. Sixth place would go to the ETKI series. That would be doing 151 miles an hour. Next up, we would have the Sunburst hill climb car, just a little bit short on that one. That can only achieve 148 miles an hour. The modern Pigeon, surprising me quite a bit, doing 143. We have another tie between the Grand Marshal and the Bolide, each of them doing 139 miles per hour. The Blue Buck does just slightly beat out the H15 Drift van, with the Blue Buck doing 137 and the van doing 135. Quite impressive for the little van. The D15, the pickup truck, that would be another relatively impressive showing, 134 miles an hour. Beating out the Barstow, the muscle car, which can only achieve 133. Very, very close in this section of the table. The ETKK series policeman officer's car, another 1 mile an hour further down the road, 132. And 1 mile an hour further down the road from that, we find the ETK 800. That can only achieve a 131. So there's a top tip. If you're evading the police in an ETKK series, don't use an 800 series, because it's 1 mile an hour slower in the top speed. The more you know. Then we have the Covet, way down in 19th place. Not bad for the little hatchback, 127 miles an hour. It beats the Legrand Custom and the Piccolina, both of which achieved a not too bad 116 miles an hour, but a little bit down on what I was expecting. The Miramar can only muster 114 miles an hour, which is only a little bit faster than the SUV, doing 113. The Pigeon does beat out this massive semi-truck by 1 mile an hour. The Pigeon is 104 miles an hour versus the Semi's 103. And in last place, a well-deserving and depressing last place, we find the Hopper, doing 92. Couldn't even crack 100. It was a little bit pathetic, I will be honest. Anyway, that is going to be it for this episode of Beamng.Drive. I'll be back with more